Welcome to the René Cassin podcast with me, Wutsia Yastremska, Communications Manager at René Cassin. René Cassin is the Jewish voice for human rights and is named after the Jewish-French co-author of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Our mission is to promote and protect the universal rights of all people, drawing on Jewish experience and values. René Cassin works within the Jewish community by building support for Jewish values amongst British Jews, and in the wider community by bringing the authority of a Jewish perspective on issues that resonate with the Jewish experience. Since first starting to work on the Uyghur issue back in 2019, René Cassin has successfully spearheaded the UK's Jewish community into being the leading faith community speaking up and standing in solidarity with the Uyghurs. This was achieved through organising events, delivering actions, regularly raising the issue in the media and other platforms, engaging the community's spiritual and organisational leadership, our youth and the future leaders of the ordinary members of the community wanting to show the support. As we mark 16 days of activism against violence against women and girls, today's episode will focus on the weaponisation of faith against Uyghur women, where I am joined by the Executive Director of Stop Uyghur Genocide, Rahima Mahmut, as part of the continuation of our Uyghur series. Some of you may ask, what is 16 Days of Activism? 16 Days of Activism Against Violence Against Women and Girls is an annual international campaign that kicks off on the 25th of November, the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, and runs until the 10th of December, the International Human Rights Day. It aims to raise awareness of the negative impact that violence and abuse have on women and children and to rid society of abuse permanently. Rahima is a Uyghur human rights activist, interpreter, translator and singer. She became Executive Director of Stop Uyghur Genocide in 2020 after spending years building a cross-community coalition pushing for greater action on the ongoing genocide of her people. Rahima has executive experience of advocating for her community. As a translator, she has worked closely with survivors to bring breaking news reports and interpreted witnesses' testimonies during the Uyghur Tribunal. She has played a key role in galvanising UK civil society against the atrocities the Chinese regime is perpetrating against her people. Rahima is also currently UK Director of World Uyghur Congress and advisor to the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. So thank you so much for being with us here today, Rahima. And quickly just introduce Stop Uyghur Genocide and the really important work that you do.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Stop Uyghur Genocide is a grassroots human rights charity based in the UK. It is dedicated to raising awareness about the ongoing genocide and human rights abuses faced by the Uyghur people in East Turkestan, the so-called Xinjiang. SUG plays a key role in mobilizing public opinion, working with policymakers and partnering with international bodies to campaign against the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of Uyghurs. Through advocacy, media appearances, and public events, SUG aims to educate people about the atrocities and push for meaningful actions such as sanctions and legal measures to hold the CCP accountable. Stop Uyghur Genocide also focuses on amplifying the voices of Uyghur survivors, preserving Uyghur culture through artistic events, and engaging the public and the political leaders in support of Uyghur human rights.
Thank you so much, Rahima. So as we learned in the previous podcast about the persecution of Uyghurs happening in the Uyghur region, also known as Xinjiang, we know that Uyghur women in particular suffer from horrible atrocities committed by them. So I'm going to go into asking you a couple of questions. So what is the current situation of Uyghur women living in East Turkestan and the Uyghur region?
So current situation in the Uyghur region, or we Uyghurs always call as East Turkestan as our homeland, it remains dire, with the Chinese government continuing its systematic persecution of the Uyghurs and other Turkic people. I would like just to go over, since 2017, I believe many listeners may not even know about the situation. China has launched what many international human rights groups and experts as well as several governments have labeled as genocide against the Uyghur population. Up to 3 million Uyghurs have been arbitrarily detained in vast internment camps, while others face forced labor, intrusive surveillance, torture, and the suppression of the Uyghur language, culture, and religion. And the Chinese state has bulldozed Uyghur heritage sites, destroyed mosques, and tightly controlled every aspect of Uyghur life. Children are separated from their families and placed in state-run boarding schools to indoctrinate them in Han Chinese culture, while millions of Uyghurs who remain outside these camps live in constant fear of being detained or monitored. And the genocide aims to erase Uyghur identity and replace it with loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. And since 2022, the Chinese government has shifted its approach by promoting both domestic and international tourism under the guise of Xinjiang tourism, pushing a false narrative of peace and prosperity. In 2023 alone, the state media claimed over 265 million tourists visited the region, and these visitors, both from China and abroad, are shown bustling shopping streets, staged cultural performances, and contrived scenes of normality. The CCP has constructed a deceptive version of life in the Uyghur homeland, carefully hiding the grim realities of mass incarceration, forced labor, and cultural annihilation. This propaganda is deliberately designed to persuade the world that all is well in the so-called Xinjiang, and the CCP's objective is very clear: to turn these tourists into their supporters, and making them believe they've seen for themselves that the region is safe and thriving. But what they are showing is nothing more than a carefully orchestrated illusion.
Thank you for saying that and telling us a bit more about what's happening in East Turkestan. But how is China weaponizing faith against Uyghur women specifically?
Uyghur women are suffering acutely under the repression. Many women have been subjected to sexual violence, forced sterilization, and mandatory IUD implants as part of China's campaign to control the Uyghur population. And this demographic engineering seeks to reduce the Uyghur birth rate, a key indicator of genocide under the international law. Women outside the camps face invasive surveillance, including forced birth control measures, and many are forced into labor in factories under deplorable conditions. Uyghur women are particularly targeted because of their role as cultural and religious bearers in society, making their persecution central to the broader effort to destroy Uyghur identity.
Thank you so much, Rahima, for telling us more about the weaponization of faith against Uyghur women. Is there something that's unique to Uyghur women?
So China is weaponizing faith against Uyghur women by using Islam as a pretext for repression. Uyghur women, as a traditional custodians of cultural and religious practices, are particularly targeted for this reason. The Chinese government has criminalized many aspects of Islamic faith under the guise of counter-terrorism, including wearing headscarves, practicing religious fasting during Ramadan, and teaching children about Islam. Uyghur women face forced secularization, and they are coerced into abandoning their religion or their religious practices. This is not unique to Uyghur women, as other Muslim communities in China face religious repression, but it is especially severe for Uyghurs due to the scale and the intensity of the state's efforts to eliminate the Uyghur cultural identity.
Thank you. And from that, a lot of UK government don't really know what's specifically happening, so it was really important to give this information out. And from that, what would you tell the UK government, or how can they tackle the violence targeted specifically against Uyghur women?
Well, I disagree that the UK government don't know or doesn't know about what is happening. The independent Uyghur tribunals finding, and we had many events, questions tabled at the Parliament, and the UK Parliament unanimously passed the motion, the Uyghur Genocide motion. It is not about not knowing, it is about taking actions after having that knowledge. So to me, not just the UK government, well, governments around the world must recognize the atrocities committed against the Uyghur women as part of a large genocidal campaign. And they should impose targeted sanction on Chinese officials and entities responsible for these crimes, as well as enforce bans on products made with Uyghur forced labor. Governments should work together to call for the international investigations and raise the issue at the UN. Diplomatic efforts must also include pressurizing China to allow international human rights observers into the Uyghur region. Supporting Uyghur women in exile and providing them with platforms to share their stories is essential, and to increasing global awareness of the issue.
Thank you. That's really important to point out. And with that, what can faith communities do to tackle violence against Uyghur women and support them as well?
Faith communities, particularly Muslim communities worldwide, have a critical role in standing up for Uyghur women. They must raise awareness about the persecution faced by their Uyghur sisters, organize protests and provide platforms for Uyghur women to speak. Religious leaders should publicly condemn China's atrocities and urge their governments to act. Faith communities can also help Uyghur women in exile by providing support networks and partnering with human rights organizations to advocate for Uyghur rights on the global stage. Interfaith solidarity, particularly between Muslim, Christian, and Jewish communities, can amplify the message and put pressure on global powers to act.
Thank you. And the other question that we also have is, what can civil society do to tackle the violence targeted specifically against Uyghur women?
Civil society organizations, including human rights groups, women's organizations, and labor unions, should increase their advocacy efforts and collaborate internationally to fight for the protection of Uyghur women. NGOs can play a key role in documenting human rights abuses and pushing for accountability by working with governments, media, and other stakeholders. They should also campaign for corporate responsibility to ensure that companies are not complicit in Uyghur forced labor or benefiting from the exploitation of Uyghur women. And civil society must keep up the pressure on international bodies to hold China accountable for its crimes.
It's really great to hear what faith communities, civil society, and well, not only the UK government but governments worldwide can do to help tackle the genocide. A lot of our listeners will also think they're not part of these organisations, and they're thinking, well, what can I do? So what can ordinary people do to act and campaign to end the weaponisation of faith against Uyghur women?
Ordinary individuals can take meaningful steps to support Uyghur women by staying informed, following the Stop Uyghur Genocide work and the Rahima work, raising awareness on social media and pressuring their elected officials to act, signing petitions, participating in protests, and boycotting companies that benefit from Uyghur forced labor are concrete actions people can take. Sharing the stories of Uyghur women through their platforms, speaking to local community leaders, and encouraging faith groups to engage in advocacy are also effective ways to contribute. By amplifying the voices of Uyghur women and putting pressures on governments and the corporations, individuals can play a part in fighting against the oppression of Uyghurs. So every individual, every single person has a role to play, from the boycotting the goods, protesting, joining the campaign, Stop Uyghur Genocide campaign, and using their social media platforms. There's so much that individual can do. If they want to do more, they can join as volunteer for World Uyghur Congress, for Stop Uyghur Genocide, for the Rahima. All these organizations are working to raise awareness and in order to make a difference. For our vital work as charity, we really cannot carry on our work without financial support. So donation is also vital. And if you can, please donate. Thank you.
And the links will be in the description below as well. Like you said, that's so many different options that you can go and take action. So thank you so much, Rahima, for all of your information and knowledge and all the actions that people can take. If you want to hear more about the weaponisation of faith against Uyghur women, we are actually doing a joint event in November for 16 Days of Activism. So if you want to hear more about the weaponisation of faith against Uyghur women and how you can act, you can sign up to our next event with the Faith Involved Coalition, and Rahima will also be a speaker there. So the link is on our website, Eventbrite, and our social media, or you can find it on the description of this episode. If you can't attend but would love to watch, you're in luck, because the event will be recorded and uploaded onto our YouTube channel. So again, thank you again, Rahima, for all your knowledge and your time for speaking with me today. And tune into our next episode in this series on the Uyghur Genocide.